Okay, I think we can get started now just for the sake of time and efficiency. So welcome everyone. We're thrilled to have you all with us here today online. So I'm Caroline, I'm the president of the European Society, and this is Laura. She'll introduce herself in just a second. We're very excited to have you here for one of our other career events. So today we'll be having a panel on careers in the European Parliament and the Council of the EU. And yes, exactly, we're thrilled to have you here with us, making it from all over the world despite the circumstances. And thank you to Laura for organizing all of this and for our panelists for taking the time to talk to us today. So I'll hand it over to Laura.
Hi everyone, I'm Laura. I'm the Careers Director at the European Society at LSC. I want to thank everyone for joining us. I know this is a hectic time. It's the start of Lent term. We all have deadlines, essays, lectures to go through, and there's also the inauguration that maybe some of you were watching before coming to this event. I was one of those people, Caroline as well. So just to talk a bit about the structure of this event, for the first 40 minutes, I will be asking questions to the panelists about their experience working in EU institutions, and then also a little bit about the application process, which I hope will be especially useful for undergrads and postgrads planning to apply for any of these internship positions in the near future. And then in the last 20 minutes, there will be a Q&A, so all of you will have the opportunity to ask the panelists any questions that you might have. Feel free to put them in the chat, and then you'll get a chance to ask directly in the last 20 minutes of the event. So as I said, the first part will be dedicated to their experience. I'm going to quickly introduce the speakers. So first we have Yash, who is a communications trainee for the ECR group in the European Parliament. Then we have Esmeralda, who is working for the left group in the European Parliament and is also a postgraduate student here at LSC. And then we have Ava and Marco, who are joining us together from one device from Brussels. They're both working in the Directorate General Justice and Home Affairs in the Council of the EU. Ava is working on issues such as the rule of law. Marco is specializing in migration and asylum. So now I'm going to give space to Yash first. Could you please maybe elaborate on your academic background and your role in the institution? What is it that you actually do?
Sure, yeah, it's nice to join everyone today. So I studied economics at St Andrews University. I graduated there in 2018. Following that, I spent 2 years at the Scottish Parliament in Edinburgh, working as a parliamentary assistant within a very similar political group. And then in September, I moved to Belgium to begin my traineeship within the European Conservative and Reform Group as a communications trainee. So a lot of my work mainly involves assisting the communications team with its press releases, with its social media, especially after Brexit. Being a native English speaker, that comes in handy a lot. But basically, yeah, it's a very quick overview of what I do.
Thank you very much. Esmeralda, I mentioned that you're a postgraduate student at LSC. Could you talk about what is it that you study and how that links to your role in the European Parliament?
Hi everyone, yeah, nice to meet you. So I'm Esmeralda and I study gender policy and inequalities, which is maybe not directly related. I did an undergrad in international relations in a small town in Germany, and in the left group, they're called the Left, or GUI NGL, which is the far left group in the Parliament. I'm mainly working on the Committee on International Development and Humanitarian Emergencies. So yeah, as a policy trainee, you have to be a bit, like, sometimes it's a bit, you have to be flexible what policy area you work on, but I do have a background in development, just not as study related, but I do enjoy both topics.
Thank you very much. Now, Ava.
Hi everyone. So I come from France, and I moved to Belgium to do my master's in international relations. so more focused on security, peace, and conflicts. I didn't graduate yet, so I'm doing this traineeship as part of my studies. And in my studies and my previous work experiences, I focused on transitional justice, gender equality, especially in the Western Balkans. So that's why it led me to the council in fundamental rights, where I mostly have to do research. So it's a particular kind of traineeship. I have to monitor the rule of law developments in member states, and yeah, then there are the usual policy fights with working parties on fundamental rights, but it's a lot of research.
Thank you. What about you, Marco?
Yes. Hi, everybody. So I also work in the same Director General, which is Justice and Home Affairs, but I'm on the other side of the Director General, and I do migration. And especially my unit is called Migration Challenges, which means that before the new pact on migration and asylum was published, most of the legislative files were stopped or freezed because there was a lack of consensus. And then they created this unit that was mostly monitoring migration flows. And so this is what I did for great part of my traineeship, was to monitorize and gather data, analyze, do statistics. And then since September, when the new pact was published, I started to follow policy meetings and working parties addressing the new asylum regulations or the blue card and legal migration in general. So it changed during my traineeship.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. We could stay with Eva and Marco first, because I want to ask about the traineeship scheme that you're a part of, how it works, what does it offer? I know that Yash and Esmeralda are not part of a particular traineeship scheme, so I want to start with you guys, and then we can move on to Esmeralda and Yash to talk about the European Parliament.
Yes, thank you. What's peculiar is that even if in the council we are very little number of trainees, we are around 70, there are still two different schemes of traineeship, and one is me, and that's the paid traineeship, and then there is the unpaid undergraduate traineeship, that's Eva. And so majority of the spots was for postgraduate and paid traineeships, and so over 70 is around 40, 45. And so as it works is that when you do the application, it's quite a simple and streamlined application, not too specified. You have to, of course, fill in the CV and your motivation letter, which is very short. They shortened, I think, last year. So it's around 1,000 characters. That in the end is 7 lines of motivation. So very little. You really have to try to be synthetic and passionate with words. I don't know how to do that. And after that, they let you choose a policy area, not a position, but a policy or area of interest, which, for example, for me and Eva was justice on affair, but you can choose communication, graphic design, smart, IT services, everything that the council does. And on basis of that, you also write, I think, a very short motivation, and then you are chosen on that basis. So on basis of what the area you choose, the unity working in that area is going to fill in, they're going to choose among the people they are selecting, and they do interviews, and then after the interview you're appointed. But you don't know while you do the application exactly which role will be. You apply for an area of interest, which is quite flexible.
Yeah, and so I would say that the difference with the other institution, as Marco said, is that we're only a few trainees, but we're almost all in the same buildings, which is really nice compared to the commission, for example. So it's smaller group, and so to talk about myself, so it's called like compulsory traineeship because they're credited. It's around like 10, 12 people per semester. You don't have more chances, like the statistics are a bit the same, you know, to be accepted. But in my case, I'm a bit younger. And so if you have already quite some work experience and you can afford to work for free for 6 months, I would say then you have more chances to be accepted, because of course you shine a bit more in the middle of maybe less experimented applicants. However, I just realized that we don't know which units are paid or not. Yeah. So me, I applied for fundamental rights.
Yes.
It wasn't rule of law. So you should read the testimonies of the trainees, because they will tell you what is really the work about. And I didn't know that this unit was unpaid. I just applied for the compulsory one. And so yeah, if you have a unit that you really, really like, maybe it's interesting to try to find out before which scheme it's covered by. And interesting as well, the units are doing the recruitment. It's not like maybe there is a computer, but I'm not even sure.
No, it's a selection procedure. It's a human selection procedure. Is not an algorithm or things like that.
So all the interviews are different. They might search for very different things. The job is also different. So yeah, try to connect with the former trainee. I would say that's important. It's basically your future boss that will do the interview. So.
Okay, thank you. I have a follow-up question. So you say there's only about 70 trainees. Does that mean that there are not that many applicants, or is it just very competitive?
I think there are less applicants than other institutions, but there are quite a few. I remember that when I was rejected the first time, then they realized they did a mistake and they recovered the second time. But the first time they rejected me and they told me that they received 7,000 applications, which means that still the ratio is very little, I think, of the rate of people that are accepted. But the thing is that the council, as you may know, is a little bit less transparent than the other institutions, so they don't release percentages, or they don't release statistics on that, or we are not aware of. That's another thing. And the other stuff is also the selection procedure is less clear than the one from the Truman, the Schumann traineeship, which is a little bit more guided with more guidelines. Our is a little bit more wide and broad. It could be good or bad. It depends on where you end up.
I see. Okay, thank you. Yash, I know you are working for the ECR group, so tell us how that came about, how you got the job.
Yeah, so working with political groups is a little different to applying for one of the traineeships. It's far less formal. So for me, my job was actually advertised on W4MP, which it's a UK-based kind of jobs website for anyone that's interested. It's a very good resource with political jobs in the UK. So it's W4MP. I thoroughly recommend for anyone in the audience that's based in the UK and is looking for political work. But the job was advertised there. It was quite a simple application process, just a CV and cover letter, and then your interview, just like Eva and sorry, I've forgotten your name. Just like they said that your interview was with your former boss, was with your to-be boss. So again, it's not the most formal program. So although I'm in communications, I do work with the INTA committee, which is the International Trade Committee, and I assist MEPs with other stuff as well. So it's quite similar to working in other political offices. So when I worked for a politician in Scotland, you had to be a jack of all trades. 1 minute you were writing a press release, the next minute you were writing a speech, the next minute you were doing some policy research. So I found that it's been quite similar, and it's a very good opportunity for anybody that wants the breadth of experience that's involved in being in politics.
Thank you. That was very interesting. Esmeralda, how did it come about that you started working for the left group?
So I'm a member of the Left Party in Germany, so it always made sense to me that if I want to gain, is my connection fine? Ah, great. Okay. That if I want to gain experience, I would want to do it with them. Yeah, and it's a bit more unpopular, I would say, to do traineeship with the group. I think I would not have found out about it if I wouldn't have known, and most most trainees I met were not aware that you can do a traineeship with the group, because usually, you either become a Schumann trainee or you directly apply with an MEP. So it's a bit of a niche, but it's still very well structured and smaller, and that is really nice. And as you're part of the group, I think what is really interesting is that all kinds of parties from all over Europe are part of that group. And so you really see how, even if they're all left, obviously left means something different in every single country, and you see how they do their internal negotiations much more, and that's something I really appreciated. So yeah, and I just applied twice a year. An HR manager, and then yeah, that's just how it went. At first I was actually rejected, but then yeah.
Okay, we lost her, but I think she'll connect with us soon. So the last thing she said was that she was initially rejected, just like Marco said. So maybe that's an inspiration for all of us to keep trying until we achieve what we really want. Sorry, we lost you, Esmeralda. Was there anything else that you wanted to add? No? Esmeralda?
No, I think that was it.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So next I want to talk about your normal day at work. So you come to work, whether it's in person or online, what is it that's on your agenda? What are your responsibilities? And maybe what's been your favorite thing or project that you worked on so far? Eva?
Yes, so we spent like a month and a half in office only. Then we had to teleworking, so that was a different experience than what I expected. Again, I'm doing a lot of research. That could be a bit media monitoring, in fact, because I have to check the developments in Hungary and Poland mostly, in relation with rule of law, but other member states as well. That means also following the academic developments, so attending conferences, writing reports. So yeah, I would say that's it for the research side. And then in the council, you have those working parties where delegations discuss ahead what council conclusion. Yeah, like to prepare legislation, and I participate in the fundamental rights one. So here I could follow some files that are ongoing, yeah, like on the European Convention on Human Rights, on the Charter of Fundamental Rights. It's a bit more legal here. So coming from a political background, I had to develop a bit my legal skills. And yeah, I would say that's all.
Thank you. Marco?
So one thing that we forgot to say before is that we are particularly lucky as trainees because we were offered a second chance after our first traineeship. We are actually finishing one work at the council, not 5 months. Usually the traineeships at the council are 5 months, but since we started just together with the pandemic, they offered us to redo our traineeship. So this is the most enriching thing of the traineeship that, of course, I don't think other people will enjoy because I hope there is not going to be another pandemic. And but we had the chance to develop our skills for longer times. But for me, I'm actually quite lucky because I managed to go sometimes to the council because we do quite often meetings of working parties on legal migrations and asylum. And on those meetings, there are often VTC, so video conferences, but they have limited numbers of connections also on the side of the council. And so there are small listening rooms in the council where there are 3-4 people that can enter. And so I'm often go there. For example, tomorrow I will go to the council to follow a trialogue meeting, which are the the compromising meetings between Parliament, Commission, and Council when they don't find an agreement on some piece of legislation. And I'm going tomorrow for a trialogue on the blue card that is going on from 2016, the negotiations, and I'm not finding an agreement. So this is what I do, and these are the highlights, because of course you prepare for the meeting, you read the agenda, you take part in the meeting, and you write the flash report that is disclosed internally after the meeting. And then there is the more routinary work, which is I collect 3 times per week, I collect data on arrivals day per day on the main migratory routes, so on the central, western, and eastern Mediterranean, and I aggregate them in graphs and statistics on the evolution of the migration flows. And then I also do media monitoring for searching the main informations on what's happening migration related.
Awesome, thank you. I want to remind everyone that if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and you will get a chance to ask that question in the Q&A in the last 20 minutes of this event. Esmeralda, what are your responsibilities as part of your job?
So as I work for the development committee, it is a lot of like coordinating back and forth with my supervisor, who's the coordinator for the committee, and then also with the personal assistants of the politicians that then attend that committee. And it's kind of like we prepare for them what they will do when the committee meets. And I think my favorite task, and also my main task, which is very fortunate, has been on developing my own amendments on policies. So as time goes by, I was lucky, as the others, that I was also a trainee for 11 months because my traineeship also got extended. So you really grow your responsibilities. And at first it was more like, oh, can you draft a thing here and there? But then in the end, my last task now was developing the amendments of our group to the COVID response and in international development, so how we can support the global south in the COVID response. And I think that's really exciting. And then, yeah, a bit randomly, I happened to meet our co-president, a German called Martin Schiedewan, and he got really interested in me doing work for him. So I also started a bit working over there, which was then also very random, more budget and taxes, which like Eva, I also had to get a bit into it. But that's exciting because you see all these different policies and you quickly have to read into them, and it's topics you've never worked on, but suddenly, yeah, you can contribute to that.
Wow, thank you. That was very impressive that you got to work on the COVID response, for example. Yash, I know you touched upon this, saying that, one moment you're writing a speech and the other you're doing something completely else, but could you elaborate on that? And maybe what was your favorite thing so far?
Sure. Yeah. One thing I'd also like to point out is I also got this job the second time of applying. So persistence definitely pays. But yeah, no, I also have to do the media monitoring quite regularly. Our group has MEPs from, I think, 12 different EU nations. So compiling all the relevant news that's relevant to all the members in the group. Also keeping up with things like the Commission's press conferences, which are almost daily, to keep on track, keep on top of what the Commission is putting out there, and to keep our members notified. Then things like writing press releases to send to media outlets, and then helping our director of communications with what he's got to do as well. Like, so for instance, he has to occasionally give press conferences, so it's preparing briefing notes so that he's well prepared for these things. Then also, I think my favorite side of communications is probably social media. So I like doing graphic design as kind of a hobby. So it's been fun to have the opportunity to contribute towards the group's social media channels and to kind of contribute meaningfully in that regard with graphics and videos and other assets.
Thank you very much. Was there anything that surprised any of you about your DG or unit or the people that you work with, whether it be, your boss, supervisor, or other interns? And maybe we could start with Yash.
I've actually got one that might surprise a few people. It's very informal, the European Parliament. Like when I got there, I expected everyone would be walking around like suits and ties. And don't get me wrong, everyone's very well dressed, but it's actually the European Parliament at least has a very casual environment, I'd say, like jeans and a jumper and you're good to go.
Okay, that was very interesting. Esmeralda, what is your experience?
Yeah, same. And then, like I mentioned before, also that just randomly other people hear about you and they're interested and they're like, "Do you want to work for me?" And kind of just like with these massive institutions, you just always think everything is so formalized, and then it's really refreshing to see that that's not the case.
What about Marco and Ava? What about the Council of the EU?
Okay, maybe more, let's say, formal. I think I didn't expect such interinstitutional relations, actually. And I found interesting to see how institutions try to communicate, coordinate, or are struggling against or fight each other. So yeah, maybe I should have mentioned, but there is obviously a big part of the work which is like following what are the other institutions doing. And I think I was maybe a bit naive and thinking that it was more natural, that everybody knew what everybody was doing. And yeah, so I would say this sometimes maybe even competitive, I would say, from time to time. So yeah.
And that is for sure for me one thing that is very good for the traineeship scheme, especially in the council, is that we are very little number of people, so we had the chance to know each other quite well, and we do completely different things. So the scheme at the council allows you to exit for a little bit from the Brussels bubble. As me and Eva, we are classic Brussels bubble because we do stuff which is, she does rule of law, I do migration, is the fashion show of what is popular right now in Europe. So we are quite normal, but at least in our traineeship, there is people doing design for the council. So they do the graphics for the council. They do the social media manager for the council. We have people working we have engineers that they work with the IT system. So it's completely a strange background of people which are doing very different things, that they found each other, at least for a little bit, all together in Brussels, and it managed to never get bored about what we do, because if you work for 6 hours, 8 hours on migration, and then you speak with your friends about migration, it's just a kind of repetitive and boring. But here we can talk about whatever we want. It's kind of more meaningful relationship with the trainees.
Thank you. That was all very interesting. So if you could maybe sum up or describe the quote unquote company culture in a few words, would you say that it's casual, informal? What would you say? We could start with Yash again.
Sure. Yeah, I think I wouldn't go as far to say that the company the culture is casual. I'd say it's relaxed for sure, in terms of, I think the main priority is delivering your assignments on time and kind of fulfilling your work obligations. But I think aside from all that, it's an informal atmosphere a lot of the time. And then for us as well, quite often the trainees are separated from the non-trainees. So when it's a bunch of you that are all in the same position, like when I first started, it was 25 of us trainees were in 4 rooms, all next to each other. So you then get to build quite a good rapport with all the other trainees as well.
Thank you. Esmeralda? We might have lost. Oh, Esmeralda? Okay, it seems like we keep losing her. So I'm going to ask Ava and Marco first, and then I'm going to get back to her.
Yeah, so I would say that...
Yes, so I think...
Go ahead. Oops.
I don't know. We go ahead. Yes.
Yes, you can go ahead. Esmeralda, I will get back to you.
Yeah, so that the council as one of the smallest institution, it's yeah, maybe a bit more informal than if you would be in one of the buildings of the commission and you can never meet other colleagues, or so that's nice. There is a bit of a family feeling that's a bit big, but I think that when you work there, you feel that a lot. As a trainee, having spent 8 months teleworking, I can't like, I didn't really feel it, but at least within my unit, yes, super friendly, and like Esmeralda, you can go with different persons and support different persons in their work, and that's nice, because I feel that in the council there are only few experts on one subject. So I don't know, my unit, for example, it's 5 persons. So of course you can support them and help them, whereas like, I don't know, in a DG competition in the commission, you have, I don't know how many thousands of people in one building. So in the council, you cross the corridor, you see the director general. So
which is very scary, our director general.
Yeah, a bit intimidating.
But beside that, yes, she's a very austere French woman. And now, but for me, yes, I would agree on all of that. On the familiar environment, they call the council, they call it the house. So basically, every time we do a meetings, we say we do meetings in the house. It's a way of, I think it's very much a way of making people feeling a little bit more part of it. And I think that also during the pandemic, they tried to connect a little bit, and we did something also among trainees. So it's for sure quite a familiar place, but it really depends on where you land, because of course different trainees, different DGs, different experiences. For us, our DG, it's very well organized, so as far as I saw, and you can really feel relatable, and you can trust these people and they trust you. I felt quite, because I also worked before doing this traineeship, I worked for 3 months in the Italian permanent representation to the EU, which is a pretty just diplomatic environment, and the difference was very big from a very diplomatic environment in which people is doing stuff in a very austere and serious way, to the council, where even if it seems austere and serious, they are administrators, they're not policymakers per se, so it's quite more relaxed than I expected.
Okay, thank you. Those are all very surprising insights. Esmeralda?
Yeah, let's try again. I think most important for me was solidarity. I mean, solidarity is like an important left value, but it was just really great to see that also really like being lived within the group. Everyone, like, we're also the smallest group, and like you just see everyone has so much passion for the topics they're working on. And it's really helpful. Like, you could always go to anyone and talk to them, and they would happily explain to you what they're working on, and you can get involved in all the working groups you want to. Definitely super busy. There's always tight deadlines, and as the smallest group, we don't have as many resources as maybe others do. Yeah, and I really feel there's not too many hierarchies, so that's great. The workload is actually not too high for the trainees. So yeah, I never really felt stressed or like super tight deadlines. Yeah, and it's really supportive.
Thank you, Esmeralda. So now we're going to move on to the second part of this event, which is about the application process. I think all of you mentioned the application process a little bit, you know, the typical CV, cover letter. Marco mentioned that it was extremely short. So I think we can move on to talking about what is it that you think that got you the position? What are the skills that one needs to work in the EP or the council? We could start with Ava and Marco.
Yeah, so on my side, I would say definitely research. So I also have quite a research profile, and I know that it's the reason why my supervisor took me, but also because he himself did a PhD and likes this methodology. So that's criteria you can't really anticipate. But yes, that was mostly the things that we talked about. So it wasn't so much about the knowledge on rule of law, for example, but more about my capacity to have rigorous research, find good sources, write well and efficiently. Synthesis is also a big one, I would say. And then you improve them. I feel that I improve my skills a lot. So yeah, writing skills, research, synthesis on my side.
But for me, I think that really and honestly, the first one is luck. But just because there are so many people, I'm not very good in math, so for sure not for math they choose me. But if there are 7,000 applications and they choose 70 people, it's very hard to imagine the perfect profile. So the first thing is that, and this is why I tried and I failed and I cried on myself the first time, it's useless because there are so many people trying, and the people that are here, which is us, I'm not even sure why exactly we are here, even if, and that's the follow-up, I all think that we all deserve it, because it's not to feel like, oh, I don't know why I'm here, I don't know why I'm so good. I think that we all deserve what we're doing, but it's very hard to understand what exactly make us valuable for this job. For me was, I think one of the things was having already experience in the council, because I did this traineeship at the EU permanent representation of Italy. So I knew the working groups and I knew how it worked. So that one for sure is an asset. And when you go to policy DGs, especially like mine, one asset is also nationality, in the sense that, for example, in migration flows, they often search people that speaks the language of one of the frontline member states, just because often with media monitoring, you have to follow. My supervisor, she's Danish, and she thinks I also speak Spanish, which I don't, but she always asks me to translate stuff from Spanish, which I translate on Google Translator. But beside that, you can arrange yourself in finding a way to sort things out. That these are the main things. And then I would say that I have quite a standard CV, is just making through the application process by making it likable to the people. So it's also that I think the motivation is quite important, even in the shortest lines that you have.
Okay, thank you. You said that you weren't really good at math, but you work with a lot of data. Are you not suffering?
There is Google Excel, there is Excel, and I'm very good in using the calculator. So in the end, I developed, I would say, more my IT skills than my math skills by knowing the formulas for doing percentages. They are still a mystery to me.
Awesome. Esmeralda?
Yeah, so for me, again, also with these group traineeships, applications are very high. And I think persistence counts. Like, it's a good combi of luck and skill. For me, I was rejected after my phone interview, but then a month later, someone else dropped out, so they called me. And I think like, I really wanted it. It was my dream internship. So I just stayed very responsive and kind throughout the whole process. I mean, it's more formal than, I guess, these huge schemes. So I think that does pay off. Then I'm a party member and I just apply for any internship. And I had, just as Yash, I had parliamentary background and background working with the UN. So that definitely helped with the development committee. And I guess particularly for the left, also really important is that you do activism, because that is just something the left values might be less relevant. For example, the ECR group. I'm sure we'll hear more on that. Something else that's really good is that nationality doesn't play a role at all. So we have so many trainees whose nationality parties are not represented at all in the group. So I think what most cares is that your values align and that your experience shows that.
Awesome. Yash?
Yeah, so quite similar to a few of the things that Esmeralda said, particularly. even at polar opposite ends of the political spectrum, they still look for some sympathy to their aims and values. So being able to demonstrate that is definitely glowing positive. But I'd also like to touch on something Franco said, that there is, I think, a very key skill is just the flexibility to be able to adapt to something that you don't know how to do. Because I know that I've been thrown into this situation multiple times over the last few months, and it sounds like everyone else has as well. So really just having that nous to try and pick up a new skill at a moment's notice, I think will take people really far. In terms of political staffers, I think there seem to be two breeds of staffers within the political groups. It's either more on the research side, where you'll be following doing committee work, and people who are more kind of academically inclined seem to do very well there. And the other major route seems to be the political one, which is what Esmeralda was touching on, having been involved with political groups and having shown that you can demonstrate some sort of kind of political intuition, I think would probably be the best way to put it. Because a lot of us trainees, we start these traineeships, particularly within political groups, and the thing that a lot of people are looking for are to become credited parliamentary assistants or APAs. So that's like for a lot of people, even getting these traineeships can be as simple as just sending an email to a political group or a certain MEP that they like. And I've known of plenty of people who get maybe 2 months, 3 months, even just like kind of short programs where they can try and then show that they're kind of cut out for that political group, or could kind of add some value to that MEP.
Great, thank you. I want to ask probably the last question about the application process, and that is there anything you would recommend both undergraduates and postgraduates wishing to apply for these positions in the future? Do you have any recommendations, for example, on what to get involved in while at university? So societies or any other activities? We could start with Yash this time.
Sure. So I think the main bit of advice that I would give anyone is the more languages you can speak, more EU languages especially, you can speak proficiently, would be massively to your advantage. So French and English are obviously both very key. I'm not a French speaker myself, which has been definitely to my detriment. So if I could have told myself one thing, I would have told myself to learn French. Dutch is also very useful, obviously, in Belgium, but aside from that, being able to, I'd say having multiple languages is especially after Brexit, when there is a shortage of native English speakers in the kind of the Brussels job market more widely. I think that someone that can speak both French and English to a native level would be considered a very valuable skill.
Great, thank you. That's something that I myself am realizing, and I'm trying to work on my German because I know nothing and I've been learning for 6 years. Esmeralda, what do you think?
As I touched on before, I think activism, like show you have a passion for politics, and it can be any policy field, because in the end it really doesn't matter, but just that there is something you're passionate about and you put effort into fighting for achieving that, I think tells a lot. Yeah, and then maybe more practical, I had all this passion for politics and everything, but then in my phone interview, I was just asked HR questions and how I manage workloads and everything. So it's important not to lose sight of that. And I guess, yeah, working under tight deadlines, all of these skills most of us develop at LSE, or at least I am, I think will be helpful in just showing that, yeah, you have that, you can do research, you can organize yourself, and just these classic things. But yeah, showcasing that is important.
Thank you. Eva and Marco.
If you know what you said.
Yeah, several things. Like I agree on languages. I was actually very surprised about the amount of people speaking French in the council. I didn't I didn't expect this. Like meetings, they can switch from French to English to that. So that can be useful. I don't know how it is in other institutions. I also agree with Esmeralda about like being passionate about something, because that's something you can do no matter your age and or your professional experiences. On my side, it was gender equality, feminism that always led my action a bit, and I know I agree that tells a lot. Maybe a bit easy, but network, in the sense that in Brussels, for example, there are many networking groups. I'm part, if you're interested, part of Women in International Security, and it's really helpful because you can connect, you can talk with people that are already working in the EU bubble or that know former trainees. And at least in the case of the council, I think it's really useful to try to connect with former trainees to guide you a bit throughout the process, and especially the interviews. So yeah. And I also I also wanted to say, because I don't feel that they really care about like you being such an expert on one subject. Try to keep maybe a broad knowledge about what's going on in the EU. I would strongly advise to subscribe to the Politico newsletter. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that don't take a lot of time in the morning, but you're aware.
For me, I would say one of the most important things that I wish somebody told me my last year of university is to be ready for failure, because I think that is a skill we don't have. And especially, I imagine that since you do the London School of Economics, you are probably trained to think that you're very, very ready for having everything in your life and stuff. That is what they told me. But it didn't happen. And the first time you fail very bad. But it is to be ready for it, and then don't be shy, and be bold and try the most things you can, because in the end, it's just by trying many times that you manage. And so it's just not to be too hard on myself and yourself. That is the main thing of the first phase of the application process. That would be beyond doing experiences. Maybe start trying doing applications for something you're not qualified. So you start getting rejected, and then you're used to. Just try to go outside of your box, so you realize how it is the outside world, which I still don't know how it is.
Thank you, everyone. That was very insightful. Some of you mentioned that when you work in the European Parliament, it's super easy to, I think it was Esmeralda who said that people come up to you and they say, we want you to work for us. So I want to ask, where do you see yourself in the future? Do you plan on staying in the EU bubble, or do you plan on trying something completely different? We could start with Esmeralda.
Yeah, one moment. So I actually really enjoyed working with the group, and it really confirmed me that I do see my future in left politics, if it is in Germany or if it is on an EU level. And I also applied for an assistant position with the politician I work for after my traineeship, and I was shortlisted. But yeah, in the end, I didn't get it again, because I was still too inexperienced. So yeah, definitely learn failure and take rejections well. But they said they'd offer me a spot after I graduate, so I'm really excited about that. So I do think it was definitely useful to see how it looks like, and to reaffirm me that this is what I want to do.
Amazing. Well, congratulations. That sounds very exciting. What are your plans, Yash?
So I've really enjoyed my time in Brussels, but I'll actually, I thoroughly recommend this as an experience to everyone. But I think given I came out in September thinking, right, well, the virus has calmed down, I'll be able to get settled into a new job. But like Eva and Franco, I had maybe a month in the office, and I've been in this lovely room since then. So I'll be going back to Edinburgh and working for a political party there.
Wow, very interesting. Good luck for the future. And Eva and Marco again.
Yeah, well, congratulations to you both. It's a bit more blurred for us. I have to write my master thesis, so I will be busy in the next months doing this. But I think that I will stay in Brussels for a while. I mean, working in international relations and I don't know, gender, security, all of that. There is not so much in France. So I'm not sure I want to go back to France. So I think I would stay in Brussels. I'm curious about other institutions, so very happy to hear about you guys' experiences in parliamentary groups. And then, yeah, we'll see. Maybe doing EPSO indeed. I think that this COVID situation has a bit proved how good it is to have such an like position of official in the European Union, because there are still quite a few advantages. And so yeah, I'm considering that now. I think it's a good timing when you are still studying or almost finished, you are still in the mood of doing a selective exam. So yeah, maybe I will focus on that in the next month after my thesis though.
Yes, and I am doing very well in refining my failure skills. It's very good and it's refreshing after 1 year of work. And now currently I've done some applications, but I have as a longer plan, and I planned it already before to do a PhD. And to me, if you think to do a PhD, for me, the idea of stopping 1 year and do other things was very beautiful idea and very useful, because I arrived and I want to do a project on legal migration and EU laws on legal migration, but I wasn't very much aware of what they entailed really. But coming here and doing what I like to do from another perspective is very refreshing. So now if I go back to Italy, I go with a new forma mentis, with a new way of thinking, and strengthen my idea that it's important to do a PhD on the matter I wanted. And so I think it was a very, very important experience for my presence as a future researcher if I managed to do it.
Thank you. Well, good luck, everyone. Good luck with your thesis, Eva. I just want to remind everyone that we have the last few minutes. So if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat. We have a question from Caroline, who's asking, how has your perception of the EU changed since starting the traineeship? Yash, do you want to go first? Oh, okay. We have questions coming in, so hopefully we'll get through all of that.
Yeah, so despite working for the ECR or the Conservatives before, I've always had a very positive outlook on the European Union. Read into that what you will, but it's been nothing but positive, to be honest. It's been a very assuring experience, particularly in terms of, I think, well, we're talking about Joe Biden's inauguration earlier today. I think that you look at the state of politics and it seems very polarizing, especially these days. And I think one thing that I've really enjoyed about Europe is it's perhaps because of the way it's set up. There's nowhere near as much conflict about ideology, more so about outcomes. Like all the commission, all the DGs, they have very clear focuses in mind, and even the political groups will more argue about kind of domestic matters which affect member states rather than what's actually being the kind of legislation that's actually moving forward in the institutions. So that's one massive positive I've kind of had from experience from seeing the EU firsthand.
Thank you. That was very interesting. Eva?
Your turn.
Yeah, I would say that for me, it's a bit mixed. So on one hand, I had to work on so many depressing developments that seriously spending my day looking at what's happening only in Hungary and Poland, like LGBT rights violations, going backwards on abortion, media freedom, like sometimes it wasn't so easy. And I think I didn't realize how bad it was before starting this traineeship. So yeah, that's one side. But then the other is that I think I understand better what's happening, how it is happening, and I'm a bit more, aware and therefore patient. Because I hear there are a lot of criticism. The COVID situation management is a good example. And I feel that I have a clearer picture of what is actually happening, and it helps to deal with the criticism. Because then you can just say, no, but that's not true. We are working on that. Just, there are other political issues, etc. But yeah, that's happening. And I really like this. I think it's an important subject in a time where disinformation and fake news are all over the place.
Marco?
It's better. Yes, I am also working on very enthusiastic topics such as migration, so I'm also not very much giving good news every day. But one thing that I saw was how important it is, the bureaucracy behind the institutions, which is usually the things that is poked the most for being the problem, which it might be. But for example, for the council, we work with the General Secretariat, which it's a neutral institution. And yet I realized that what we write, it's important for shaping the position of the council and the presidencies in the future. So you have an opportunity from where you stand, not of course from doing party opinions, but to give your contribution to challenging, for example, the dynamics that are currently going on with the European Union and migration. There is a way within the secretariats and the bureaucracy of the institutions to bring some change. There's also outside the usually pathways, which is the member states and the parliaments. It's interesting to see that there is a chance of bringing your contribution, which is not only compiling reports.
Thank you. I think that you can feel good about yourself because the fact that you're working on depressing issues means that you're probably doing something important. Esmeralda, how has your perception changed?
Yeah, I would like to second everything Eva said. I think it really, when you just see the EU in the news or something, you think of it as this huge unified thing, and then being inside just really helps seeing how many complex processes are happening, how many different opinions are within the EU. Like it's not just this one common opinion. And particularly being in the parliament really helped me to see, or like to kind of keep faith in democracy, and because it's just really nice to see how everyone is debating, how hard everyone is working to pushing Europe towards a better future. So yeah, I just really enjoyed that.
Thanks a lot, everyone. We have a question from, sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, Octave. Do you want to ask it yourself?
Yes, so first of all, thank you for both organizing and taking part in the event. And my question is basically, you have mentioned that at some points during the internship, you were put into teams that and in topics that you had never studied before. And my question was, how did you manage to adapt to the new skills and methods that were required from you? Thank you.
Eva and Marco, do you want to go first?
Yes, to me, I think that especially with the council, where you are not really sure what you're applying for. You're applying for a policy area, then you're offered a position for which you haven't researched for. You have to arrive prepared to more or less everything. The first thing to do is to contact who was there before you. So I contacted in panic the former trainee before, because they told me I had to do statistics all the time and I never did statistics. And then I think, and then I think it's to be more confident on our adaptability, because I think we can adapt to everything, especially coming after university. So it's just they will never ask you something immediately. There's always time, and we are often, I think, on average quicker than them in adapting, and especially also for our age and where we come from. So if they give you something that you don't know, you just take your time for researching it instead of giving an answer immediately, and you will be given time and you're ready, because they're not gonna go completely outside of your box. It's still going to be something that you're prepared if you are informed on generally what's going on, as Emma said.
Yeah, I spent my first week reading, and that was okay. I mean, that's also the point. I just read and read. Again, I really didn't know a lot about rule of law before. So I read a lot. And then I would say be both willing to innovate a bit. So they have those very, let's say, blog way of doing summaries or of doing reports. You can try to add some things, but on the other hand, you can also inspire yourself from what you see in the email. So I didn't know how to do a flash report the way they wanted it, but you receive so many of them every day that you just try to do the same, you know, and then step by step you find your own way. And yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so I was somewhat aided by having prior political experience before coming here. So I mean, I'd kind of lean on that experience more heavily, that it's just a matter of saying yes to as many things as you're able to say yes to. And I think that another key skill is also, this I think particularly applies to MEP offices, that your MEPs often rely on you to be the person that has the answers. Like, where do I need to be? Where is this speech? Like, what's happening, basically? So you always have to try and keep yourself pretty well briefed and pretty on top of what's going on around you. I think that's once you've kind of mastered the basics of kind of the scheduling and how your department or how your office runs, I think everything else comes naturally a lot easier after that.
Esmeralda?
Be confident to ask for help, I would say, definitely. There's always reports that have been done before you that you can read. There's always people who are more experts who would be happy to help you. There even is a whole research department in the parliament just to do research to support you. And then everything else that was really useful.
Thank you, everyone. There's also a question: is there any way we can keep contact with you guys, LinkedIn, email, etc., and network with people who work in EU institutions? So if you don't mind maybe giving out your email on LinkedIn, it'd be great if you could maybe put it in the chat. And then we have the final question by Nicole. Do you want to ask it yourself?
Yes, no problem. So thank you all for sharing your experience, first of all. I just wanted to know if one of your institutions also offers the possibility to do like shorter internships, for example, during summer, if we wanted to like gain some experience during our undergraduate years, and if you would recommend it or if it's like too short to be meaningful.
Esmeralda, do you mind going first?
Yeah, so the schemes would be definitely difficult. In August, it's holiday, so I think that's impossible. And I think what would be most successful is directly asking MEPs, because they have a lot of flexibility and they often take on people for dinner between 1 and 3 months. So yeah, you would have to ask the politicians directly. And I think it would be useful. But obviously the longer you stay, the better it gets. So also because often if you've done a traineeship over 6 weeks, you're blocked from doing any other traineeship in the EU. So I think it might really be worthwhile waiting until you have enough time to do 5 months, and then you can really get so much more out of it. But if that's the only way to do it, then better than nothing for sure.
Marco, how is it in the council?
For us, we don't have for sure smaller periods, and I wouldn't advise it, honestly, but just because during the summer, as Esmeralda said, everything is really blocked. From the last 2 weeks of July to over mid-August, there is no meeting going on. There is nothing, because people go back to their home countries to relax. So there is not really a point, even if they exist, to do it, because it's for sure underwhelming. And in the end, for us, since as Eva is the living proof, you can do it while studying.
True. Yeah, I did it while studying. Like last semester, when I had time, I was listening to my classes at the office. So you can definitely do it. Like, okay, if you have time, of course.
There was also the lockdown, I think, that helped.
Yeah.
You can also have fun while you don't.
But I didn't manage to write my thesis. So you see, you can't do everything at the same time. I think it exists in the commission for people with legal background, but I'm not so sure. But yeah, I think like 3 months. But I also wouldn't advise for it, because as Esmeralda said, then you can get blocked, and in that sense, that's something you should keep in mind, because you have not only your institutions, you also have EU agencies that they have their own traineeship schemes. And for example, in my area, there is the Fundamental Rights Agency, and their traineeship scheme is 10 months in Vienna, so it's quite nice, but I can't apply to it anymore. You see, so I would say try to do a bit of, try to get like the broad picture of all the institutions or agencies you're interested in, and compare what's the best. And given that you can get only one, yeah, the paid one are nice, of course, and the longest possible, the better as well. So yeah, keep that in mind.
Thanks. Yash, do you have anything to add to this particular question?
Not massively to not reinvent the wheel. I think that most, like when I was looking for kind of second jobs in Europe, most were looking for at least 6 months experience already. So I think my advice would be, if you can get something that's 5 or 6 months, that would be much more beneficial to, since I've been here, I've seen people who have managed. It is very possible, not during the summer, but it is very possible to get 1 month, 2 month internships with, at least I know, my group. So they are available, but I wouldn't recommend them to anyone who had wider ambitions of working in the European institutions.
Okay, thank you. We've arrived at the end of this event. I want to thank everyone, the speakers and the attendees, for coming, because as I said at the beginning, this is a hectic time of the year, start of Lent term, and anyone who's working, it's probably busy all the time. So thank you so much for coming and for making the time. Caroline, do you want to add anything?
Just to echo what Laura said, thank you. It's been very insightful, and I think I'm speaking on behalf of all the attendees that we definitely learned a lot. So thank you for taking the time, and best of luck with the future, all the applications, hopefully limited failures. So crossing our fingers for you guys, and all the best. Yes, and thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, and hopefully we'll keep in touch, and sometime in the future we might see each other again.
Yes, exactly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.